Hello guys and welcome back to our episode weekly review now of The Mandalorian. Today we'll be reviewing Chapter 2 of The Mandalorian, a 2-week special known as The Child. In this format of a review, we're going to do a play-by-play of the episode and sort of critique it along the way. Just off the bat, I do want to say that I think this episode, while still very good, is not as good as the first episode of The Mandalorian, but it's setting up a whole lot of things to come. It sets up new characters, plot points, and I'm pretty excited for where the show's going. I think this episode did a whole lot to emphasize the scale of the Mandalorian show and the awesome new creatures and old creatures that we've grown to love over the Star Wars universe. So, like I said, we're going to do a play-by-play and sort of critique it as we enter those sequences and scenes. So, Anthony, do you want to take it away with sort of a plot summary?
Yeah, so this episode is kind of like a day in the life of the Mandalorian. He has just collected his bounty, which, by the way, spoilers for all of this if you haven't seen it. But he has collected his bounty. There's this baby Yoda species that he's now walking back to his spaceship. And on the walk back to his spaceship, he gets ambushed by a bunch of Trandoshans. And
which I would like to mention was actually set up in the first episode very subtly, where when he's talking with Grief, you can actually see the Trandoshans in the background overhearing the conversation.
Yeah,
so we know because of the magnitude of the reward and the players involved, of course being the Empire, they have followed him all the way to this planet. And we'll talk about the planet a little bit later, but go ahead.
So as he gets ambushed, he's able to defeat all of the Trandoshans, and when he returns to his ship, he realizes that the Jawas have raided his spaceship. Actually, wait, before we even get into that, before that happens, isn't he cauterizing his wounds? Because he does sustain some wounds from the Trandoshans. And there's these...
I actually believe he sustained that wound from the Blurg earlier in the episode, because it's sort of where the Blurg bit him.
Oh, yeah, it could be that. So he's trying to cauterize his wounds, and the baby Yoda species keeps coming out of his like little cradle and holding his hand up to his wound, which the Mandalorian doesn't really know what he's doing, so he kind of just keeps putting the baby Yoda back in his cradle. Right. But there's some implication there that Yoda's trying to heal him, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think that's the case too. From what we've been hearing about the Rise of Skywalker, there's supposed to be even a significant scene with Rey using a force heal, force ability. It's not really an ability that we've seen explored thoroughly in the films before. It sort of subtly happens in actually A New Hope when Obi-Wan places his hand on Luke after the Tusken Raiders attack. Yeah. It's sort of implied that he uses force heal, but other than that, we haven't really seen that force ability in play. Another interesting thing just about that force ability is it's kind of a basic one, but we have seen it before in Star Wars, and that's exactly what I think this little child of the Yoda species was attempting to do, was actually heal the small wound, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting. We got a ton of that little baby Yoda in this episode, and it's ridiculously cute. But anyway, as the episode continues, he goes to his spaceship. It's raided by the Jawas. The Jawas have taken... many of the parts of his spaceship that make it function, that make it fly, and then also I think all of his weapons for the most part. And when the Mandalorian finds this out, he is very upset, and he starts chasing the Jawas in a sand crawler, which is great because we haven't seen one of those in forever. And he tries to scale the side of the sand crawler after he tries to attempt like sniping them down from a distance.
We actually got to see the rifle, and also with the whole Boba Fett line from Empire Strikes Back, when Darth Vader tells him no disintegrations. It's kind of cool to see on live action what a disintegration actually looks like.
It's pretty cool. It's similar to like how some of the Jedi die in the movies, where it's like they go away but their clothes stays.
Right.
It's really fun. But he realizes that he's not going to be able to just, shoot them all from a distance, and he's not going to be able to stop the ship from moving. He tries to disable the sandcrawler, and it doesn't work, so he has to scale the side of the sandcrawler, attempting to gain access inside and get his parts back. And as he does that, there's this ongoing assault of the Jawas throwing things off of the side of the ship and opening like little flaps on the side that are almost like windows, and like dropping things, trying to stop him, all for him to just get to the top of this ship, to be electrocuted by maybe a dozen Jawas and thrown off the side.
Stunned.
Yeah, he gets stunned and falls maybe like 40 feet or something like that. Really serious fall. and then shortly later wakes up.
So what did you think about this sandcrawler sequence?
I thought it was a little much, to be honest. It's kind of like it's a little awkward to watch because it's kind of overly fun, not very serious, and I'd prefer to have a little bit more serious of a tone. But I didn't find it like offensive or anything like that. I thought it was fine.
Right. I feel similarly. I thought the tone of The Mandalorian was going to be like all dark.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at Star Wars, not all of Star Wars is dark. It's got those fun little elements in it, which I think makes sense for The Mandalorian. Talking about the planet that we're on, we don't know what planet we're on exactly. I know that at some point The Mandalorian is going to venture to Tatooine, but I do want to point out that the homeworld of the Jawas in canon is explicitly stated several times to be Tatooine.
Yeah.
So it's completely possible that we did actually visit the planet. Now,
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Seems very likely.
I'm not sure if anybody, Jon Favreau, came out and said, we're not going to Tatooine in the first season. I'm not sure, but I think it looks a whole lot like Tatooine to me.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's not confirmed, but I do want to say that the Jawa species do belong to Tatooine as their homeworld. And so, I mean, put two and two together. It's sandy,
it
but
looks very much the same. I don't think we've seen any visuals of like the twin sun setting or anything like that. But if we were to get something like that, that'd be basic confirmation, I would assume.
Right, but just for me, just the species of Jawa being on the planet, like it's not impossible that they haven't migrated to other planets. It's definitely possible, but again, Tatooine is their homeworld, even according to Star Wars canon. So just keep that in mind.
So anyway, after he comes to, he seeks the help of his new friend, played by Nick Nolte. I'll never be able to pronounce his name. Is it Galil? I'll never get it. And he says that his ship is destroyed, and the Nick Nolte character tells him his ship isn't destroyed. Jawas don't destroy ships. They don't do anything. They just take parts from it, and if you want those parts back, you can offer to trade with them, and they will trade you those parts back. And the two of them venture to go find the Jawas and come to some sort of agreement. And at first, the Mandalorian's kind of off-put by that. He's like, you guys stole from me. Why am I going to trade you anything? Those are my parts. They don't belong to you.
He's off-put by the fact that he has to put away his like weaponry.
Yeah.
Which I love the line, weaponry
line,
is a part of my religion. I'm Mandalorian. So I thought that was really cool. But like you said, he eventually does come to an agreement with them, and it's not actually to trade the young Yoda, any of his armor, which of course is extremely sacred to a Mandalorian.
It's also, I assume, very valuable just anywhere. That metal is probably incredibly precious.
Right. Like I said, in Star Wars canon, it was like crafted by the Mandalorians to specifically combat Jedi. So it's exceptionally famous. And that's why even in the first episode, you have even those common thugs that know about the Mandalorian armor and like even chip away at it to see if it is real Mandalorian armor. And of course, just as we learn here, his breastplate is not Mandalorian armor. It's sort of got some technical element to it. With that said, he's probably definitely going to be getting some upgrades as the series goes on. Yeah. He's going to get more of his armor forged, and he's going to become more almost Mandalorian, which is cool. I mean, even in the trailers and stuff, you can see he's adding more to his armor.
Yeah, you can see that he does get another shoulder plate, and I'm sure that probably if he does actually bring the bounty in, they tell him that first piece of Beskar iron is just the down payment. So it's not his entire payment. He'll probably receive more if he is to do that, or if he steals it, or whatever he does, because we don't know yet. But the Jawas explained to him that what they want for the trade to get his parts back is the egg. And it cuts to him walking through the desert. He still has the baby Yoda following him. And he goes into this cave. And when he's exploring this cave, it's incredibly dark. He turns on a flashlight. He sees all these skeletal remains of these different creatures. And then eventually stumbles across something that has a giant eye that opens up. And he is then thrown out of the cave. And it's pretty funny. It's pretty cool. He tries to arm his rifle, but his rifle is jammed because it's covered in mud. And then this giant, like, rhinoceros-looking furry creature comes out. And
just going off of that, I researched this creature, and we don't really. This is the first appearance of this creature in Star Wars canon.
Yeah.
And we don't really know a lot about it, which is always a welcome addition. And I would love to make a more in-depth video when Jon Favreau and the people behind Star Wars actually reveal more about this creature, but I do want to confirm that it is a new creature to Star Wars. I don't believe it's a Legends creature, although it could be from some obscure Legends book that I haven't read in a minute or at all. But I do want to say that the rhinoceros creature, we don't have an official name, but it is a brand new creature.
It's definitely really cool looking in that scene. And then also I want to just point out briefly that as far as special effects go in this series, I think that's really good looking, this whole scene. But it is very obvious from the beginning of this fight that the Mandalorian is definitely at a disadvantage. He is nowhere near capable of defeating this monster. It throws him around like a ragdoll. His weapons are damaged. His armor is damaged. His breastplate is literally just hanging on to his armor. It's constantly about to fall off. And right at a moment when the Mandalorian takes out literally his last thing that he could use, which is just a very short blade, the Yoda baby levitates the rhino creature and
kind of turns it around a little bit.
Yeah, he levitates it, kind of turns it, and then the Mandalorian has a little bit of an advantage that he's able to take and stabs the creature in the side of the head with his knife.
And it kills it.
And kills it.
I like that the Mandalorian went in and actually kind of twisted the blade a little bit, made sure that the kill was confirmed, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Talking about the Yoda species, there's two things that are really driven home in this episode. That being that the Mandalorian is not this unbeatable fighter. He's very much beatable.
Yeah.
That's being established big time in this episode.
He's literally defeated by Jawas.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's established is that, in fact, this member of Yoda's species is Force sensitive, confirming 3 for 3 in Star Wars canon of every single one that we know.
And I would say not even just a little Force sensitive, very Force sensitive. Being able to be as young as that Yoda creature is, and then being able to levitate as big of an object as he was able to. I mean, you could look back at Empire and see how much Luke struggled to lift the X-Wing out of the water. And I would say this is probably, not quite as big as an X-Wing, but it's a baby still. It's very impressive.
That's a great comparison. It's exceptionally impressive. And now we know basically that every single member of Yoda's species in Star Wars canon is not only a little Force sensitive, but crazy Force sensitive, which now you would understand why the Empire would want it. Something else I want to talk about is, to my knowledge in Star Wars canon, it's very dangerous cloning Force sensitives. And that kind of has led me to believe that this baby is not, in fact, a clone.
Yeah.
But it's the intentions of the Empire to potentially clone it. And we have a video coming out a little bit later that will discuss some theories about that.
Yeah.
And a pretty big revelation from the first episode concerning cloning and this Yoda baby. Anyway, but it is super impressive. Where it goes from there is the Mandalorian and his friend are actually able to, after they make the deal with the Jawa species and he recovers the egg, which I think is a pretty cool take on the egg, honestly. It's covered.
It's visually interesting. It's almost furry, just like the creature is. And then the reveal that the only reasons the Jawas wanted this egg is just because they wanted to eat it is pretty funny, especially considering all the pain that the Mandalorian had just gone through trying to get this egg. And he goes back to the Nick Nolte character, and the two of them get the parts and they start fixing up the ship. And it's in this scene where you really realize the Mandalorian is not really an evil guy by any stretch. He's just doing his job, but he really is genuinely grateful for this new friend that he's made, and he offers several times to pay him, and the Nick Nolte character just says it's my responsibility to be of service to you because you are my guest. And then the Mandalorian says, well, then at least all I can offer you is my thanks. And it's a really cool moment because he can be very much portrayed as an antagonist in the show because he's what most people in Star Wars look as the bad guy. But he's not really bad. Or
he's very morally gray. And Jon Favreau even talked about this before, how he wanted to dance that line with the Mandalorian of an individual that is willing to do bad things to achieve his goals, but maybe isn't completely bad to the core, where someone like Boba Fett is the opposite.
Yeah.
Where maybe he'll stop a mugging along the way in his travels, but at the same time, he'll decimate a village if the Empire pays him handsomely enough.
Yeah.
It's sort of the opposite of that.
And you know what? There are definitely some scenes where the Mandalorian is a little aggressive, especially in this episode.
It's a part of his culture.
Yeah, there's a great little scene where when they're negotiating with the Jawas, they say something about how the Mandalorian, I think, tries to speak their language, and he doesn't really do a great job. And the Mandalorians mock him, and then he shoots his flamethrower at them.
Smack the Mandalorian.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Did you understand that?"
Yeah,
it's a pretty funny line. But that's basically the whole episode so far. The biggest revelations are more about what the Mandalorian is like as a character and what this Baby Yoda is capable of as far as Force abilities.
Another thing I want to talk about is after Yoda, the Baby Yoda, used that. And I apologize, Yoda species has never been given an official name, not even in Star Wars
It's a little
Legends.
frustrating to talk about without a name.
Anyway, it seemed to really take it out for a little while.
Yeah, that's a great point. He was sleeping from every moment on until the very last shot of the episode.
Which is something that you don't really see a lot in Star Wars. You will see individuals tap into their use of the Force, and then they're able to like kind of recover really quickly.
Yeah.
But the Force, I believe in even a lot of novels, it's described as like a muscle, where it's like if somebody's put in a dire situation, they can use a muscle that they may not have used or exercised or built up over some time, but in the following days, it's going to be exceptionally strained. When somebody, for example, like a Darth Vader who hones his craft of the Force, is using that muscle all of the time. Therefore, it recovers quickly and it can hold more. But like the Baby Yoda, obviously, this is one of the few displays of Force that that we've ever seen, and clearly it took a lot out of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm really interested to see. Yoda's midichlorian count was 4 million. So if this Baby Yoda's midichlorian count is anywhere near close to that, it'll be exceptional. Yeah. According to the synopsis of the next episode, it does say that the Mandalorian intends on delivering this bounty to the Empire. I really like how Nick Nolte's character, the Ugnaught, kind of says, "May this child bring you joy," something like that.
Something about many like riches or something like that, like a handsome reward, I think.
And joy too, like the child's life or something. And I think that's foreshadowing that the Empire definitely has negative intentions for this reward and this bounty, and the Mandalorian's going to have a big choice in episode 3. So I'm really excited. I'm bummed that I have to wait a week for episode 3.
Yeah, it was kind of nice to have the 2-day break, but then it's like, okay, more Star Wars now, please.
Anyway, so just brief overview of the Mandalorian now that we've done the play-by-play, but also given our thoughts. I don't think this episode was as strong as the first one. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah.
As far as other Easter eggs that we missed out, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. The biggest cool things for me is I love seeing the disintegrations with the rifle. The Baby Yoda is definitely super cute. I could also see it overstaying its welcome.
Oh yeah.
But
I can't wait for the merch.
I do like the Yoda using the Force to stop this rhinoceros creature. The rhinoceros creature was awesome. The battle with the Trandoshans in the beginning was awesome. It shows like the Mandalorian kind of starts on a high note, and he kind of just gets beat up more and more progressively as the episode continues. But I'm excited to see where the series goes. This is definitely not what I expected for episode 2. And I think as sort of a final rating, I'm going to give it like a 7 out of 10, with the first episode being an 8.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all we have to say about The Mandalorian Chapter 2, The Child. What are your thoughts on it? What do you think The Mandalorian is going to do with this Baby Yoda? What do you think the origins of this Baby Yoda are? And were you ultimately more or less, like, which episode do you prefer? Do you prefer the first episode or the second episode? Because they differ in tone pretty drastically. Like I said, we both prefer the first one, but I would totally see why you would like the second one more. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.